Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Next Issue podcast. I have Clay here with me, and today we're going to be talking all about Love and Death. This is a new show from HBO Max, or Max now, I guess.
It's
Uh,
not TV. It's
it's not
something
TV, it's
else.
Max. Uh, it's,
It ain't
uh,
Max.
it ain't Max. But you know what? I think this show is definitely very reminiscent of the prestige you used to get out of HBO.
Yeah, and you know what? What might be interesting is that this is one of the last good HBO series they do.
Yeah, because this one from the beginning was hailed as a Max original, so they
Yeah.
did change the title.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so really, really interesting. But
I
we're not
only
here.
noticed that this week because of the app
It
change.
it just changed. Yeah, the app just changed this week. So, but we're not here to talk about Max and all its fumbles. Maybe we'll get into that on the next live, whenever that happens. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, we're gonna get into it. Full spoilers. I mean, obviously, this is based on real events, so like
Yeah, this is
I don't
from
know how.
1980, so
Yeah, but either way, full spoilers. I mean, I knew nothing about this really going into the show. The only reason I had seen some of the ads and I knew Elizabeth Olsen was in it, and she was the main reason I wanted to watch it.
same.
Uh, I I can't name four things that she's done outside the MCU. Uh, so I
Oh my
definitely wanted to
god!
check
Like
in.
now I'm like going. Okay, she did the Ingrid Goes West. She did the movie with Jeremy Renner, like
Wind
Winter
River,
River, Wind
Wind
River.
River, yeah,
Um,
and
shit, don't do
this,
this to
yeah,
me.
that's it.
And Doctor Strange.
Yeah, you see, so outside
Oh,
of the MCU.
she was in the Old Boy remake that I still haven't seen.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I did see that. Oh, I forgot about that. So I guess I have seen more than
Yeah,
four things with this now, but
but
yeah,
probably the most comparable is WandaVision because she does the TV housewife trope and then
she does.
transfers into this of uh, a housewife in 1980s Texas. She does a pretty good accent.
I think so. I'm really bad with accents as far as like noticing them. Uh, so yeah, to me it was. I mean, it was fine. I think she definitely sounded like somebody that would live up there in Wiley, or I guess they lived in McKinney, right?
They lived
No,
in
no,
McKinney.
no. They lived in Wiley, and then the Jesse Plemons and his family lived in McKinney,
Yeah, Alan.
which is
Yeah,
crazy.
and
Like,
so from what I understand, Shelby said from the book because they did more, about the city and everything, that it was still a very agricultural place, And I grew up in Rowlett, which is like close to Wiley, and it was very country. Like the probably the homes that they were in were the first built homes
yeah, yeah,
in
like
that
the first
area.
neighborhood. Yeah, because I mean, and well, I guess I wanted to pull up the premise of the show first. So let me do that because definitely we
Okay.
should talk about
Well,
what it is.
I'll talk about the cast while you're looking that up because
Sure.
Elizabeth Olsen plays Candy Montgomery, who is married to Patrick Fugit, who I think most people remember from. Oh my God, I want to say Band Aids, but I know that's not it. It's Jesus Christ, Almost Famous. God, I hate that I'm losing it. And he's really good as
Yeah.
the husband because I read about like both actors that played the husbands and how they had to kind of go into it because so much unravels that this husband and he's a scientist.
Hmm.
He's very methodical. He's not very
Yeah, I think he worked
thoughtful.
at TI. I think, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken. Yeah.
yeah.
So real quick, this show revisits the true story of an '80s Texas housewife who was accused of brutally killing her neighbor with an axe. And that's pretty much it. That really is the full
This is the
these 7 episodes.
this is the third time this story's been told. So you have this one, then you had the one last year that was on Hulu with Jessica Biel, and then the original one. I was surprised to find out Jake and Maggie Gyllenhaal. Their dad was a director. and he directed the first movie that told this story. And it was
Oh,
it was a TV movie, and Barbara Hershey played the Candy Montgomery role.
okay, okay. Yeah, so I like I said, I hadn't heard of the story. I didn't know anything about it really. What really got me, I think in one of the commercials or something I saw online, I saw the Como Motel,
Yeah,
and that's as you can see here on our background. And I was like, oh, that. I mean, I've driven by a Como Motel. Like if you live
yeah.
in North Texas,
It's in
uh,
Richardson on
yeah,
75.
yeah, you've driven by. So that was really interesting. So that kind of drew me in, and then I saw Jesse Plemons was in it. I think him and Kristen Ritter and Elizabeth Olsen are the only ones that I really recognize. But I gotta say, one of my favorite characters is Don, the attorney.
Oh, so good.
He is
He
really
brings that
good.
southern
Yeah,
attorney attitude. And if you've ever been into a Texas attorney's office, it looked just like his office. Dead animals on the wall everywhere.
yeah.
Uh, uh, very rich desk and diplomas all over the place.
Don Crowder, who I think I saw. I mean, if you watch till the end, like he ran for governor in the '80s of Texas. Um,
Yeah, I read
that
the book.
that does paint a picture of what kind of person he might really be. So
It was interesting because he did get very famous from this, and he tried to,
yeah,
and he went on to try a second criminal case that he lost badly.
okay,
It said that after that, though, the locals, because he went to the church that they all went to,
right, right.
that I believe was in Murphy,
Uh,
because that was out there in the country area. They all blamed him, and they just said that he kind of made their neighborhood. I can't quite remember the exact wording, but it was just like they blamed him for her being free. Like essentially, she committed murder, got away with it, and it's his fault because they all saw it as murder. Even though the weird thing about this docu series is they portray good and bad, and nobody in this was there to say any of this shit happened. And so, of course,
right.
they always say, this has been dramatized for TV and everything. So to know that none of the conversations happened except for the ones that are documented through attorneys and court cases and stuff. It really portrayed her as a nice person, like those first few episodes. Like she's just the
Yeah,
nicest person in the community, does everything, and her victim was such a bitch. That's the way it came across, and you're just like, how can you say this? But that's what the book says. The book says that the victim
Betty.
was Betty was very popular where she came from, and so she was like a big fish in a small pond. And I guess when she moved here, she didn't have that same appeal
Mm,
in her society and her church where she was going. So maybe that bent her out of shape a little bit. But obviously, the postpartum was an issue with her first kid. But then we discover, like, when she turns on Candy, she claimed she was pregnant, but then the autopsy said she wasn't.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it it was a really interesting journey to see how they portrayed everyone. One thing I did want to mention about Don, the character, the actor who played Don, Tom Pelfrey, he was in Iron Fist. He was the
Get the fuck
all
out
the
of here!
yeah, yeah, he was the antagonist or one of the antagonists in the first season, right? The siblings are I think trying to take over the corporation.
That's
Uh
fucking right. He's the brother.
yeah, yeah, and the reason I think he looks so different is because of the spray tan.
Yeah, he does have
that
that dark, dark tan on.
The Texas tan that he's got going on.
And dude,
But
I
he's
mean,
really good. He's
yeah, and
very
he's from
charismatic.
Jersey,
Yeah, yeah.
and he does a great Texas accent.
He's very charismatic. You can definitely see if that person was like that in real life, why people would be, like he could sway a jury like that. So
Yeah,
also,
the character Don Crowder has a very sad story.
yeah,
because afterwards, he tried that second case, lost, ran for governor. I guess he believed in his own hype because of this case, and then lost his brother and then committed suicide. I
I
believe
believe he took his own life. Yeah, that's what they
at
mentioned
like
at the end.
58.
Yeah, that's what they
58.
mentioned at the end of the show. Um, Also, Jesse Plemons, what a cast! I mean, his
Dude.
physical transformation too. Like, if you see him in pictures as they were promoting this, he's so skinny. Like, it's wild compared to like like he put on some weight for the role. You could tell like it is just they wanted like a little bit more than dad bod for sure. Like
Oh
they
yeah,
wanted him to look like just an average person that anybody else on the street probably wouldn't even take a second look at. And then for some reason, now obviously when you cast Elizabeth Olsen, your main character is going to be very attractive.
very.
So it's yeah, it was really interesting. We're great cast, I think overall. The the before we get into the story, the last mention I want to make, I wish we had gotten a little more Kristen Ritter
Yeah, it seems like they had her in there just for the name. I
just to
wanted to
kind of
see
hang
them
out. Yeah,
interact because, like,
yeah,
there's well, I'll get to it later, but
we'll get to it.
yeah, we'll get to it. But I wanted to see them interact more because they
Yeah,
were supposedly best friends, but it seemed like Candy was best friends with everyone at the church.
yeah, that right. Especially with the previous pastor that ended up leaving, who's a recurring character in Law and Order that I've seen multiple times. I've seen that's where I recognized her from.
I
But
recognized her from Hellion. She was in the Marvel Hellion show, and she does
oh, I haven't seen that one. Okay.
check it out.
And then the last mention I want to make in the cast, Bruce McGill as the judge.
D Day.
Ah, he was great. He just
Yeah,
they needed somebody that portrayed somebody who wanted to be larger than life, and they nailed it. I love when he's in the courtroom with his like with the dark sunglasses on for
yeah.
like his appearance. And yeah, I mean this judge. Now the courthouse they were shooting at, it looked to me close to the one that's in Denton, but I don't know if that's what it was. Like and then there's a
They
Den Square with the courthouse.
Yeah, yeah. They filmed it all in Kyle, Texas,
Okay, that's cool. That's
and
very cool.
surrounding areas because I know I saw Austin and Round Rock and some other cities listed there. Um, I know that house that the murders committed in is still out there because I looked it up on Zillow, and it sold last year.
Oh, oh
The house
wow.
that Betty Gore died in.
Oh, I wonder if it was after the first show that came out.
Yeah, I don't know. That's always weird.
That's so weird.
Could you
That's
live in
so
a murder house?
hell no. That's why I don't look into what's going on at my house. I don't know what's happened here.
Like
Um,
every time they go to do laundry in that place, that's where everything
dude,
took place.
yeah, that's wild. So like I said, this is only 7 episodes, and I think the show pays very well, right? I think we
Yeah,
don't spend it never spends too much time in one thing or like it gets bogged down on something like we very quickly move into the affair, like surprisingly quickly.
right.
Um, and then even as I was watching the first episode, you start with her like with Candy washing off the blood. You don't, cause like I said, since I didn't know what was going on, I didn't really pay much attention to that. And then we kind of flash back to all the events.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting because once I saw, I was like, what is this show really about? And then talks about the case. So that was really wild.
We haven't talked about Betty Gore yet. Betty Gore
Right.
is in the movie just long enough for you to hate her
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then for the crime to be committed. And Lily Ray plays her in this one, and Melanie, is it Lansky from Yellow Jackets? She plays her in the other version, which she makes me want to see that other version because I'm very curious how she played Betty Gore because she's a bitch. I mean, they play her as a full on bitch. She's a bad parent. She's a bad wife. She's a bad mom. Like she's just mean. And it's weird to watch a story about real people that they're portraying her like this only, but and it's really based on like some of the community said, well, she was tough to deal with. She was, you know, I look at it like her father in the who's watching the trial at the end. I mean, what if her real dad's watching this and people just portray his daughter as a total bitch all the time? That's
Oh,
just
I would
and
hope,
almost deserving the murder.
I would hope that anyone that was involved in any of this stuff that's still around is probably not watching this. That's man, that's interesting because I don't know. So this all comes from a. I mean, this is all based on a book as well, right? I think it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there was.
Evidence of Love. And if you watch the show regularly, I'm a big fan of Joe Bob Briggs, who hosts horror movies on Shudder. That's his alter ego. He wrote for the Dallas Times Herald under John
Mhm.
Bloom, and he co-wrote this book, Evidence of Love. And it has every detail. They spent 2 years going through all the documents, interviewing people. They list in the back who they interviewed and everyone that helped and everyone that didn't. So,
Yeah.
so it's got a lot of detail, and they went through all the interviews and stuff. So, Joe Bob, or I want to say Joe Bob. If I say Joe Bob, I mean John Bloom. John Bloom has said this movie is the most accurate because it's stuck to more of the facts, and the Candy movie that was on Hulu was a little more sensationalized. And so it was neat because I would pick up the book and flip to a page, and I could remember that scene playing out. It's just described in detail in the book, and
Interesting.
it's if you can find it, like you can't find a first print because this is a out of print book, so you could probably find a paperback somewhere.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's all pretty wild how the story just kind of keeps coming back, and we are at that time where like it's weird that we have two projects that are so similar. Like this happens all the time in Hollywood,
Yeah,
right? Two projects that are very similar, coming out very close to each other. Um,
and it's
but
weird that this one is so old and has stayed with us, but I think it's the idea of suburbia being some sort of safe haven,
yeah,
and then just murder and everyone looking at each other.
yeah.
And obviously they looked at the husband first.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think if had he not been out of town, I bet he would have ended up in prison.
Yeah, because the chief of police was looking to sensationalize this and blow
Yeah,
it up and make it a bigger deal than it was. Yeah, they really kind of gave him a hard time in that questioning with him and that other sheriff at one point. And dude, Jesse Plemons is so good at this. It's so wild to see him play this character and then like be able to turn on a dime, like and do different things because he could be so caring with Betty,
yeah,
and then it's like he goes and has the affair. He can be so caught up in Candy, and then see this other woman that they hint
yeah,
at the end.
yeah. It feels to me like he was playing the character as very socially inept in most circumstances. I think also very detached. I think he some Jesse Plemons can do this like phase where it's like kind of an empty look where you don't see anything like what's going on in his demeanor.
Breaking
Uh,
Bad when he shoots the kid,
yeah.
just that face.
Or if you've seen the Black Mirror episode where he's in it, like it's just
He's
like
the
there's
captain.
nothing there. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing there. So he was great. He was great in this, um, and just his relationship with both. Which I gotta say, I think just seeing how an affair could have happened in the '80s, like with her preparing like a full lunch, and like it feels. I don't think I've ever seen an affair in media portrayed kind of like this in such a way where it's like there's so much prep time behind the
She was
meetup.
a housewife, and then she turned like the affair into like a dating scenario,
Yeah, yeah,
and then even tried to rationalize it to her husband as, well, we talked a lot, we just, I just needed that emotional friend and stuff.
yeah.
But what is left out of the movie that is in the book, she had another affair that came out during the trial,
Oh,
and
what?
Yeah, and so that's not in the show. She had another affair, and so when they had a recess during that session, she had to run out and tell her husband that she had had another affair that got brought up in court. So it's like,
Oh wow.
imagine that, like, and see, that's why I question these shows sometimes, because they pick and choose what they want to use, even though it was validated by John Bloom. A second affair. You know, I I feel like she knew quite a bit. I feel like she did it. She hated her. I don't know. I'm starting to get into the reasons for it, but let's stay with the story. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely mainly want to focus on talking about the show. I don't. This is not your true crime podcast trying to solve the mystery. This is just us kind of as the show. Um, Another thing that the show did really well to me it was the use of music throughout the show. There's a lot of
Yeah.
scenes where Candy's driving, or I really love the sequence where Candy and Kristen Ritter go out dancing, and the whole thing is kind of being intercut with like some pretty gruesome stuff that's happening, like some flashbacks, like. But I just love that, like once again, Elizabeth Olsen also gets this look in her face, like she kind of also detaches from reality when it's going on, um, and it
Right.
was a lot. Like we saw a lot of those sequences where she was driving, either by herself or with the kids, and then like a song that was playing, like it was all kind of part of it. So that was I really love that aspect of the show.
Yeah, she seemed to almost be out of the when the songs would come on, it would pull her in, and she wasn't in that moment. She was, whoever was in the car or whatever, and it seemed to like kind of validate herself. Like the
Hmm.
theme of the show is "Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood" by Nina Simone, which is like she murdered someone.
Yeah,
There's no, so we're supposed to misunderstand it because of XYZ reasons, as
yeah,
they go into the court case. They really pushed this hard to show her as
right.
innocent, even though she did it. Like, and that's the weirdest part of this is even though the court case came out that way, the movie did leave certain elements out that I felt like would have shown her being more guilty. Like, I would have loved to have seen more of the newspapers that came out at the time, because even I mean, back then Dallas had two big publications that were
Hmm.
covering it. And Texas Monthly has both articles up. You can still read now.
Yeah, I think also the show just very, like I said, as it moves very quickly, the incident happens in the fourth episode, I believe. So kind of halfway through the series.
Right.
So the first three, the affair ends very quickly. Even her conversation with Pat about it, like I I don't know, like I felt awkward too, as kind of like they brought those things up, and and Pat just kind of took it in stride, like like you mentioned, the actors were very good at also playing that role. But it's also really interesting to see how just like just their lives were very different, like right, like the husbands
Yeah.
of a work, the housewives got to take care of the home and all the events and everything, and then like the Pat would put in time with the kids, which was always kind of nice to see. Like I felt really bad for his character the most, I think.
Dude, that guy was, and again, like Patrick Fugit does such a good job, because at the beginning he's supposed to be the happiest guy, and then
Yeah,
it just goes downhill. Like he has to take the call from the attorney explaining what his wife has done. Like like she doesn't even tell him. Like the attorney tells him,
right,
and then he can't like be a part of anything on the legal side, so he's kept in the dark for a long time.
right,
And the attorney has to get to the point where they go, we need his help, so we're going to bring him in.
right. Yeah, a few times I was just thinking, like, did this guy like take a break from work? Like, because obviously this whole happened in the span of months, even though we only saw little bits and pieces of it. I was just kind of thinking of that kind of like, or like, would he even get fired? Like, why would a company want to have? I don't know. I feel like that's something that a company would do too. Like just because of all the controversy, like no, you can't work here anymore.
Yeah, yeah. But there's a moment in the show where she tells him, that Betty attacked me. And Patrick turns it on and he's like, thank God. And she's like, what? And he's like, well, she is a lot bigger than you. This could have gone the other way. And so he turns around from like, oh my God, you murdered someone to you could have been murdered by this person,
Right.
and sympathizes with her.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, he stands with her through the whole court case, and it's just so hard to watch because it's just like this woman has just shit all over you, dude. She has
Yeah.
just done you wrong, and again, like that, she shouldn't have to go to jail for that. But we're seeing the story that really makes us or we're supposed to sympathize her with her in
Yeah.
in some degree.
I also really liked how the show kind of takes the whole, the church community aspect of it, but really kind of talks about. I mean, it makes it feel like this can be a very toxic community if you don't really like, depending on what you're looking for to get out of that community,
Look at
right?
Okay, but you got to get. You also got to think about it too. This was like 1980. If you look at churches now, a
Mhm.
lot of those churches have become like mega churches. And
Yeah.
she was on the path to making that church bigger, getting another preacher in it, like just and being from Texas and seeing all that shit. They were spot on. Like these people who live in these communities that go to church and put on a happy Christian face are still the same people that commit murder, commit these atrocities, but then they go, well, they're good church going people, and that's supposed to be some sort of
Right.
out.
I mean, they kind of forced out the previous pastor because she got a divorce, like all those things. So it's like you're part of this community until the community turns on you. Like same thing happened with obviously with Candy. The same. Like I don't know. I feel like in the show makes it seem like they embraced her a little bit more, but
Yeah,
it's
but
still very weird. It's still a very weird dynamic. When when both couples go on the retreat, that marriage retreat,
yeah,
it felt very cult like activities too,
yeah.
which was weird. Like that was just weird. Like, um, but I mean, I guess the other aspect of the show that they kind of touch on is like back then there was no worry about mental health, right?
Oh no, you had tons of like these little self help groups and books that
Yeah,
were big before they could start selling them online and
yeah,
different kinds of bullshit late night infomercials. Uh,
right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I think that's all. Like the show touches on a lot of very interesting things. I think it just has a lot to say without being like in your face about it. Like you just kind of like, and I don't know, maybe it's a little because we do live in Texas and it feels a little more personal. So I would want to see how somebody that lives outside of all this stuff kind of like seeing. But I mean, I guess a lot of places are kind of the same too. So, but
Yeah. Do people at church look at other people and go, that guy could commit murder? That
right,
woman could kill somebody, but they're
right.
just church going people.
Hmm. All right, let's get into the trial and then start to get wind down because we don't want to stay here too long. But I I also want to commend the show for holding back on the gore until like we didn't see. Hold on a second. Let me
Yeah.
finish. We didn't see anything up until the last episode. I think right
Right.
in the last
We,
episode they
we
let
see
loose.
blood, and that's it.
Yeah, we don't see what anybody saw walking into that laundry room. We don't see a lot of the fight. We see like bits and pieces, but nothing that I would qualify as like, oh, I gotta avert my eyes or even to.
You don't see a
It,
body. You just see
it's a
like
lot of
some blood.
implied violence where they could have really gone for it. I don't know. I didn't watch the Hulu thing, so I don't know how much they went into that stuff. Um, but they could have really like sensationalized this and gone for it and showed you like they could have done what they did in episode 7 more and they didn't.
Yeah.
I think
They could have
I
really.
appreciate.
They do it in the court case descriptively.
Yes.
And that is really brutal to listen to
Ooh.
because you have like a coroner explain all
Mhm.
the blows from the axe to the head, the face, the arms, all 41, and
Yeah.
describe the body.
Yeah. Well, and then we do finally end up seeing the fight when the I think it's when Candy's testifying.
When Candy takes the stand and she starts to explain
Yeah.
every step, they replay what we saw earlier, except they go into the detail, and
Hmm.
they get graphic. Like if you're here for to see a good crime story, you're about to get a horror film because
It
they
gets
show that
almost
axe battle.
it it felt very Evil Dead to me in some parts. Uh just like
She
that's how.
I saw Walking Dead. I saw Rick putting the
Yeah, that
machete into
too.
the
That
head when
too.
she takes that axe and brings it right down, and
It
they show it goes in, and it looks so good because I was like, oh,
so yeah. No, it was very graphic. I was like, oh, I
you
was not. I figured. I thought we might be past all that. I didn't think we would go back and revisit it. I was like, I'm okay with not seeing what like how they happened. I think it works just as well if we had never seen it. But I think it was necessary for the courtroom for us to be put in the jury's place, right? Kind of how the this is because that is what the jury would be picturing. If you were telling me all
right.
those things, and I was in a jury, I would be like my mind would be going to the worst places.
Well, the one
Uh,
thing though they didn't show, but the coroner did explain was the part where she puts the axe so far into her that she had to like put her foot on her to pry it out of her, and then
oh yeah.
continued hitting her. Like we never see that happen. We
Right,
just
right.
hear that description.
Yeah. I did want to ask you, since you kind of went over through the book, and I know Shelby read it, so I'm sure you guys talked about it. Do they talk about the doctor that hypnotized Candy? Did they bring that up? How's it? Is that very
Yes,
similar? Like,
yes, and he also helped with the book. He was one of the people quoted in the
okay,
back of the story.
okay, because well, look, I'm not a scientist. I don't know how hypnosis works. I don't know if it's real. I'm sure there's something to it, but
Yeah,
that part of the story was the one that felt like the most unbelievable to me, which is weird because there's so much other stuff that could have been it. Like that whole scene in his office when she's regressing back to her the first incident with
yeah.
her
When
mom.
she's like 4,
Yeah, yeah. I was like, there's no way. There's no
that
way.
and Elizabeth Olsen is like top notch in this the whole way through.
Hmm.
That scene works because she makes it work. Like that's a hard
Yeah.
scene to make work because she's regressing to 4. She's withholding her feelings. He finally lets her release, and she
Yeah.
just screams. And we get to they do film some stuff with a younger version to kind of take you through what she's going through, which is nice. But man, she's just describing it all and
Hmm.
acting it out in a chair, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I, it was really like the whole image of Don and his assistant sitting outside and having to go into the office to figure out what's going on because they just hear Candy's yelling like this. The description of the captions is I watched it with captions and it just said like primal scream. Like
Yeah.
it was like that. There is no other way to describe what was happening in that scene.
Oh
So
yeah.
that was
I
very well.
I there are so many exchanges that Elizabeth Olsen has that are great because when she's with Pat, she's a different person. She's like got the wife persona.
Yeah.
And then when she's with Alan, she's like his girlfriend in a way. Like the way they talk, she did the like you said, she made everything for them to have dinner in this hotel room and to have an affair. Like it was more of a date in a setting.
Yeah.
And it,
Even in the last scene when she's saying kind of goodbye, like she's still I don't know, like what did she think she was gonna I don't know what she thought she was gonna get out of that conversation.
yeah, and I don't know why. Like, why do you need to say goodbye?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, there's so much fucked up in this because you have Candy who goes to, I guess they had like a wake and meets Betty's parents, Betty's mother, Betty's
Oh yeah.
father. Uh, you know, Candy is the first person that Alan calls after he finds out.
Mhm.
He's had the neighbors go in and find her dead body. Um,
Oh, that whole scene with the neighbors going in, like, man,
that was a great scene.
because there's no cell phones or anything, right? These people have to go back to their house. First of all, Alan,
First of all, you have to know your community.
right,
You
right.
have to
Who do
have
you
their
like?
phone numbers.
Yeah, have to call them. So Alan first has to figure out who can call and who can go in and see. And even then, I think he called three neighbors ultimately, right?
Yeah.
Before he kind of finally told them like break into the house or whatever. Um, so yeah, that whole thing, like, I don't know, it's very wild to imagine.
It's an amazing thing that you don't think about is someone discovering a neighbor like that, and then the phone ringing, and in a second, someone realizing I have to communicate to this other
Hmm.
person their spouse is dead.
Yeah, yeah, like because the first guy couldn't do it, right? One of the other neighbors had to come in
Yeah,
and be
he
like,
had
"I'll talk to him."
he was just like I can't,
Or,
I can't, and then that guy explained, and it was, I guess it was so brutal they thought she was shot at first. So they were,
yeah,
that was the thing that was being said at first that wasn't true.
yeah. Um, I also really enjoyed a lot of the how detailed the show is, especially like with everybody outside in the press, and you see the little vans like the NBC 5 van or like the
Yeah,
news,
they
so
had
like
all the local
it,
stuff.
yeah, all the local stuff like very well researched, but just the media circus that this was, um,
Yeah.
in a
It
time where the media is not even like it's a lot less common for the media to attach itself to something. Right now it's all very accessible because everyone is a reporter now with their phones, right?
right.
But back then, like, it was a whole production, and like this was insane. Now, obviously, I don't know, this happened in the 80s, so some people that are watching the show probably could still remember kind of like maybe even seeing some of that stuff. Like Clay, I don't. Well, I mean, I didn't know how connected to like some of the stuff that happened, or like how much of it you might have seen on TV, or
I honestly I don't remember it. I mean,
yeah, because
Wiley was close to Rowlett, and I'm sure there was talk about it, but
yeah,
I don't remember that. I was like 9.
yeah. I figured you were younger. I was like, there's no like Clay. Does Clay's not worried about what's going on in a courtroom at Wiley?
He's reading X-Men.
That's
The
right.
one thing I did, there was a couple of things from the book I wanted to bring up, but like the the title "Evidence of Love" came from a letter that Betty wrote out. That's in the front of the book, that I
Oh,
wanted to read real quick because it's very interesting. But it says, "Dear Alan, sometimes I have doubts about my worth as a person, and wonder if I'm really accomplishing anything that I'm doing, uh, and am doing what God would want me to do. But if you express your pride in me, then I feel reassured that I am really important. I need to be reassured and told this often, just as I need to see and feel tangible evidence of your love. I love you, love Betty." Like, she's
wow.
asking, like, this is what I need to survive. Like, in our relationship, your your acknowledgement of me and will help me get through this. And there was none. There was,
Yeah,
I mean, this guy cheated on her. They had a kid together, but really, uh, from what Shelby read in the book, Betty was just looking for a husband who was rich. That was the qualifications, and that's how she ended up with Alan,
I mean,
which is
who
really
isn't?
sad. And yeah, but it's so sad that like he, like, during the whole thing, I mean, Evidence of Love is a great title because really, when you get to Alan and Betty, Alan is trying to take care of her when he's there, when he's in front of her, when she's having meltdowns. You know, he's obviously having to deal with her from work. But to him, the affair seemed like the perfect thing. And then later, they hint at in the show, there's another woman that he has an affair with after Candy, and he marries her.
Yeah, yeah, they mentioned that at the end. That I think there's a scene of them on the couch, like when everything's kind of being winding down on the trial and all that.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be one of the neighbors from the church helping,
Hmm.
um, but it was, they were married like within, I think, 2 months of Betty's death.
Wow.
Yeah, Alan did not love this woman, and this woman probably felt that. I mean, other than the anxieties and mental health issues she had, the postpartum that wasn't dealt with, it still feels like we just watched a woman get away with murder because this woman, everyone
And
felt. thought she was a bitch.
Yeah, and Jesse Plemons definitely played it that way. Like he definitely played it that way. Now I can't even imagine another actor that would be like in that role that could fit so well
Yeah,
to that.
I don't know. He was so good because there were times where he's just like you see him taking it all in,
Yeah,
especially at one point where he's come face to face with their family and like if you had never had this affair, our daughter would still be alive.
right,
And
right.
just call him out on it. And that's probably one of the best scenes he has in that show.
Mhm.
Even the goodbye is a great scene because he's trying to process what the fuck is she doing here
Yep.
and what's going on. Jesse
Yeah, he
Plemons is
just kind of turns
really
it
good.
off and like he lets her say her piece, and they're like, okay, and then that's it. Like he's
Yeah.
done.
But he
Yeah,
was
at
done.
that
He
point,
was done at court because remember when he approached the attorney and they said and asked how it was, how he felt, and he goes, "Well, I guess we'll get what we get." Like he kind of just shrugged it off, like whatever happens, it'll be the best of the situation. Oh well. And it
yeah,
was like that's how he felt about his wife.
yeah, yeah. And
And
they do mention that his the kids ended up with the grandparents with Betty's parents.
that story is the worst part of this because
Yeah,
there's a
that's
whole thing in the back about the kids. The kids went to go live with their grandparents after he forced them to go live with this stepmom. Like their mom had just been murdered, or yeah, it's two kids, right? That
yep,
Betty and Ellen had two. Yeah, um, he remarries, forces these kids to go live with this new woman who's going to be their stepmom. They have mental issues and obviously problems coping with all this. They go to live with their grandparents in Kansas. I think they reference them coming down from Kansas at one time,
yeah,
and that's where they had a better life. Like it was just it sounded like I mean, who would want to live in that town? Like who would
right.
want to live? Everyone knows about your mom. Everyone knows what your dad did, and your dad is even still doing it. And from what I've seen, all the kids' names, Betty and Alan's kids, and Candy and Pat's kids, changed their names and tried to get away from all of this. So just terrible for all those kids who had to sit through this
Right.
because their parents couldn't keep it together.
Yeah. So I think overall, this is a great show, but an awful situation.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
but it's really well done. I didn't really find anything that was like sometimes, like you said, some of these shows can get too sensationalized where like it's almost distasteful because like think these things really happen.
yeah.
I never felt like that at any point during the show, but I don't know if you did.
Well, they were so detailed that they show the kid when Candy leaves the house. There's this one child playing across the street, while
Mhm.
Candy's got like the wet hair. She's washed all the blood off. She gets in the car
Yeah,
to leave. That they changed that kid's name so that would never be revealed because that was the only witness that saw her leave the house that day.
right, right. Yeah.
Just
So
it's just so messy. The suburbs are a fucked place, man.
that's what we wanted to talk about, really, guys. Move into. I don't even know where you move to because the city also sucks. Uh, yeah, just live in a van. I think that's what a lot of people are doing. But Clay, do you have any final thoughts on the show? Do you recommend the book? I know you guys are kind of skim through it. I know Shelby read it.
I definitely recommend the book. I always will recommend the book and documentary over the actual show. I don't
Mhm.
think there's a documentary. I know there's a lot of YouTubers who do true crime that have done this story of Candy Montgomery. But when you take freedoms to tell story about real people, you leave stuff out that doesn't give you a complete story. This
Yeah,
was well acted and well told, but obviously from some of the notes in here, like there were things that were left out. I absolutely loved seeing Texas in this because they did the great accents. They nailed it in the way the communities are, the
yeah,
way the people are, the attorney. I mean, it felt real. Like I mean,
yeah,
it felt like you know being here.
yeah, for sure.
Uh, I would be surprised if like we see some awards going out to Elizabeth Olsen
Yeah,
and Jesse Plemons too. I mean, the top four in this are so damn good.
they really are. They really are. I think also, like I said, also the who played Don Crowder.
Uh,
Uh,
Tom Tom Feel Free.
Tom, yeah, yeah, I think also him. Like really cool. And I was like, do I need to rewatch Iron Fist?
No,
No, no,
I tried. It's so bad.
yeah,
And
but no,
Kristen Ritter was really, left out of a lot of shit. I
yeah, I
felt
was,
like there should have been more scenes between her because, like, she's lying to Pat, and that is a key relationship, but she's also lying to her best friend. And how do you deal with that? They said that after they moved, that they really, they would call, but it just got fewer and fewer calls over the years, and that Candy pretty much. What was weird is Candy went to go be like a family therapist. She did, and was even working with her daughter as a therapist, which is weird.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there was that whole sequence where Pat asked Kristen Ritter's character if she's having an affair, and then she's like, "Don't tell Candy," but then she still gives her a heads up. Like that whole sequence of events was super tense. There's a lot of scenes that like they really make you feel like awkward and tense, and I think that's obviously by design. But it's a really interesting show. I wouldn't binge this, and
Yeah,
I'm glad it was out weekly because I don't really think I think I watched the first two because they dropped three, and I watched the first two, and then I watched one more. And I mean, then I from then I started kind of watching them weekly. So, but okay. Well, any closing thoughts?
nope. I just really wanted to talk to you about it because it was really good.
Yeah, same.
I enjoyed all of it. I'm critical of it, but I can enjoy a good performance and understand that some things were dramatized.
Yeah, for sure. Well, all right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Let us know what you thought of the show. If you've seen it, down in the comments. Let us know what you think about this whole HBO Max thing. Recommend us Elizabeth Olsen things because there's not a lot, but I think we've seen some, and I think we should watch some more. She's really good at every like not just doing Wanda stuff. She's just really just good at being in front of a camera.
I'm
So
gonna watch Old Boy. I'm going to.
I saw it. It is what it is. So, but I'll be interested. Maybe we'll do this again for Old Boy once you get to watch it.
Okay.
So, all right, cool. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Stay tuned. We have more comic reviews, trailer reactions, TV recaps. We also usually go live on Saturday morning, so stay tuned for that. And as always, thanks for watching, everyone. Bye bye.